Something happened between my initial run and my Tournament of Champions appearance. I completely changed the way I trained.
What is the capital of Alaska?
Juneau.
Colorado.
Denver. Studied and prepped for the game. And it all paid off. After buzzing and betting my way through 244 clues during the tournament, I ended up with the grand prize of $250,000. I figured if I could take home the grand prize after such a rough start, where else could great preparation take me?
Hello, I'm Christina Harkar of Audible. I'm in our studios in Newark today interviewing Buzzy Cohen, the Jeopardy champ of great renown and author of the upcoming Audible original Get Ready. I shoehorned myself into this conversation because I was on Jeopardy once.
This New York Yankees fan is going to be on Jeopardy!
Who is Christina Harkar? That's me. I lost after one day, which makes me an honorable minor leaguer in a sport in which Buzzy hit the majors and stayed. Please welcome Buzzy Cohen. Welcome home, Buzzy. Welcome home to New Jersey.
Yeah, the Garden of Eden state.
Let's dive into talking about your audio original. How did the idea for this title come out of your time on Jeopardy?
So the first time I appeared on Jeopardy, I had prepared like everyone prepares, or like most people prepare. I would watch the show, sitting on my couch with a ballpoint pen, clicking away, answering right. I think maybe I looked at a couple Trivial Pursuit cards, maybe. But what happened was I got on the show and I realized how different the experience of being on the show was from that kind of preparation. And while I had maybe prepared well for the content of the show, the questions, I hadn't prepared well for the context of the show, which is taping 5 shows in one day, on your feet, against very smart people, under lights. It's a totally different ballgame. And as I started to get ready for the Tournament of Champions, I said, what's a better way? What are some things I can do to help me be better prepared? And I ended up winning that Tournament of Champions, and I give a lot of credit to the very unique, idiosyncratic preparation I did. So, like I said, I started thinking about not just what I was gonna have to answer on the show, but what the internal and external context of that was gonna be. So I like wearing suits on the show. So after my first shows aired, I started wearing a suit and tie every day. And I work in a pretty casual industry, but I said, I wanna make it so that on tape day, when I put on that suit and tie, it just feels like another day. I started waking up for about a month before tape day at the time I knew I was gonna have to wake up for the show, because I am not a morning person. So being at the studio at 7 or 7:30 really could put me on the back foot. So I just got a little more used to it. And then the really fun stuff was that I brought my study materials to the gym, and I would hang from a chin-up bar or hold a plank or push like a sled with 400 pounds and have my trainer or someone else there start quizzing me while I was working out. Because
Wow.
when you're holding a plank or the top of a chin-up or whatever, you can't even spell your name. I mean, we've all had that feeling of when you're just trying to hold it together. And that's a lot what it's like. That's a lot like the feeling of being on Jeopardy. You're just trying to hold on. So can you get your brain to get to that stuff that you really know, even when you're kind of in panic, fight or flight mode?
So then you took what you learned on Jeopardy and applied it to your life.
Yeah, so when the Tournament of Champions was done, I had just gone through this period where I really imagined myself almost like an Olympic athlete, but for Jeopardy. And I had this bug, right? Not just to compete, but to really see how far I could push myself. So I walked into the gym and I said to my trainer, so how long would it take you to train me to win a deadlift competition? And he said, well, you've never done a deadlift before, so I think we'd need at least 8 or 9 months. So I found a deadlift competition that was about 9 months out, and I signed up. And I just started applying the same principles that I had to Jeopardy to deadlifting. And I realized how many things we can really prepare for because we're not applying necessarily the right mindset, or we grab the received wisdom or whatever it is, we're really doing ourselves a disservice.
That's one of the things I really loved about your audio, the idea that, I can get ready for all sorts of things. So tell us a little bit about, please, the things regular, ordinary, everyday people, listeners, can do to get ready for things in their lives.
Yeah, I think the first thing that often people don't do is really try to understand what the objective is. They have a top level thing like, I want to give a great sales pitch. You have to kind of dig in and be like, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? And as you start to dig into that, you can start to understand what you really need to work on. And the other thing I think that people don't think enough about is all of the other factors besides the content, right? You write a great speech, you put together a great sales pitch, but then on the day of, you wear a pair of shoes that are really uncomfortable. And all of a sudden, you're thinking about how much your ankles hurt, or you're cold, or you're tired because you've been practicing after work and now it's 9 a.m, or you've had way too much coffee. This is my perennial problem.
Mine too.
Yeah. And so I think that by just trying to better approximate the actual situation that they'll be performing in really small and simple ways can really help people be better prepared. For me, practicing Jeopardy standing up as opposed to sitting down. For people who need to do something in front of an audience, we don't always have an audience, but doing something in front of an audience as opposed to a friend or loved one is a very different feeling. But sometimes just hitting record on your phone can give you a little bit of that, like you kind of like perk up in a different way. I see it all the time. I have a lot of friends who are musicians, and they know how to play something perfectly, but then they want to like video it, post a video online. And the second they hit record, they make a mistake. Now it's not that they don't know it, but it changes the way we become more self-conscious. So practicing with that, like filming yourself a bunch of times, can really help you not necessarily have that feeling go away, but know how to work through that feeling.
Right. So would you say that getting ready is not just a discipline, but also an imaginative act?
100%. It's totally an imaginative act. Really getting ready requires you to step out of your comfort zone and start to experiment. And really, what I hope this audio does for people is give them license to start experimenting. There is no one size fits all because we all have our own challenges. We all have our own strengths, and every situation is different for each person. So what the book is, I give you a lot of different examples, but I also really want you to have fun and explore, and seeing how some of the kind of goofy and maybe slightly neurotic things that I do paid off. So maybe try your own goofy and neurotic things,
Are you looking forward to hearing from listeners what things they try and how it goes for them?
That's like the thing I'm most excited about.
Yes.
Because, I've only done a little bit of this, and I only have so many opportunities to kind of try something new or do this or that. I had the opportunity to interview some really interesting people, which was really cool and really inspired some ideas that are in this book that I hadn't totally fleshed out or had one perspective on. And so I really try to invite people to try a lot of different things.
So you just touched on it. I'm going to push a little further.
Yeah.
So what was it like to get ready for an original audiobook and to write it and to record it and to be voice first?
When I was faced with the blank page, there was a little bit of terror. Not terror. I was daunted. I was daunted, rightly so. Like I
get that a lot.
Yeah. I hadn't, I joke I hadn't written anything longer than an email since college, but that's not totally true. But I really hadn't bitten off something of this scale. And at first, I really only had my own somewhat limited experience. But as I got into it, I had a great editor, Lara, who really, really helped me. And I just kept going. I kept writing, kept refining, and it was really, really interesting and really fun to see how the folks here at Audible really know how to create the content specifically for this format. So things that might work in a writerly way may not work for audio, and other things work really well for audio that may not work in a written book. As I got into that, it became more fun, and I think the writing kind of got better because I realized it's gonna be my voice. I can just share this with you. And as you know from seeing me on the show, there's some personality here.
No.
And
You?
So I was excited to be able to do something in a format that would still allow me to have some of that come through. I'm not the authority. I'm not the be-all, end-all. I'm kind of a regular person who found this very particular way to improve myself, and I'm just sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that answer, because not only did it make my day, it also gladdens my heart to have this leitmotif running through all of these things that, we are who we are.
Yeah.
And you follow your passion, and maybe it gets goofy, and maybe it doesn't work out, but trying things and doing things are twin acts, and listening and speaking are twin acts, and it's really good to hear.
And I think there's a lot of fear of failure, which is, look, I don't like to fail. I don't like to fail publicly. And because so much of what we do is shared on social media, that fear of failure can sometimes hinder us from really trying things. And that's why preparation, getting ready is so valuable, because it's like, get all the failure out of the way before the big day.
Right.
It's like we're so afraid of failing that we don't even prepare ourselves to not fail because we're afraid of failing in the preparation. I have done so much failing. I continue to fail all the time, but as much as I can, try to do that, in a low stakes setting, so that when it really counts, like I've kind of already had that moment, I've worked through it, I figured out what went wrong. Or if something goes wrong in a public way, it's not like, oh my God, I've never failed before. It's like, you shrug it off. You're like, okay, things happen.
So in your book, you talk about being a salesperson and having to always answer the question, why you?
Yeah.
So since you've prepped, my real question is, if I were a listener, why Get Ready, the Audible original?
I think the short answer is why not? But I think the truer answer is we all have opportunities, big and small, to really put our best foot forward. And I think we all really want to. And I'm not giving you a recipe book, but a guide to how to start to think about that. And I think that in a pretty enjoyable way, I hope, you can start to figure out and see where the opportunities are that you should be preparing for. Meeting new people or having to share your work with coworkers they can always go a little bit better, I think. We all want them to go a little bit better. And this is just a great, sort of like a travel guide to preparation that you can keep in your pocket as you go around your life. And like a travel guide, you don't necessarily need every section, but it'll help you get the most out of that trip.
That's a great answer. I want to thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And for answering the questions, preparing for them and answering them. And I want to encourage all of our listeners to download Get Ready by Buzzy Cohen, not just because it's an amazing Audible original, but because I love it personally. It's a great book. Hey, can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you help me with my buzzer work?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Too slow.